I'm not quite in the same age group as the singers. By the way, all of our cast are much younger than what they're playing. They have to age up massively. But what I love about it is, we're dealing with 4 opera singers, but it's the same with actors. And being an actor myself, you have this extraordinary career, you do some extraordinary things, but what do you leave behind? And I think it's what I love about the play is that it is a celebration of the artistry of these amazing artists. It's also a very beautiful love story, and a kind of tragically beautiful love story, and that I think is really engaging. The language is beautiful, and I think what Howard does really well is he creates 4 very, very clear, very well-defined characters. And the way that they interact with each other is like a little symphony in itself. There's a real musicality to the way these 4 people intersect and interact and have their little moments and their moments. It's been a joy for me to work with these 4 actors. I do quite a lot of student productions, directing at NIDA or QT at WAPA, and I've directed quite a lot of younger actors, but to work with 4 actors who totally know what they're doing, my job mostly has been just to get out of their way, and it's been just an incredible joy. Andrew and I have worked together. I've played his drunken American wife 4 times. And so it's a joy.
That's really quite impressive.
Yeah, and I don't drink, so, but anyway. And he's always been so patient. Last time we worked together was Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf in the Cremorne here, QTC production, which was a joy. So it's been a joy working with Andrew, and it's been really amazing to it, and I just love them all. They hate me occasionally, but we're getting on very well. So.
Wonderful, thank you. And do you want to, maybe I might throw it to you, Bruce, next. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about the design challenges and what kind of world you wanted to create, where this play is notionally set? I realise I'm that person who didn't turn their phone off. This is very embarrassing, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that right now. Please don't follow my example. Sorry.
Andrea just talked about the artistry of these performers, and I think that's one of the first conversations we had, was that we wanted to show the artistry of the talents that these 4 performers have within the architecture of the set. Naturalistically, we started looking at Victorian conservatories. There's a lot in the play about kind of birdcage references, and the Victorian conservatories felt right. But I kind of pushed it towards a bit more of an Art Nouveau period because I think it's more lyrical in the architecture of the Art Nouveau period. So we've ended up in this little funny shaped room, which was important to me because it's not a normal room. It's quite an odd shaped room that employs curves and straight lines at the same time. And it's got a singular support. I think the oddness of the room appealed to me because, as we all age, our features change and shift, and as does this little room.
And it's got gorgeous doors.
Gorgeous doors. The stage directions suggest that there's one entrance, and I was keen to do 2 so that it doesn't become about an end point in their lives. It becomes a thoroughfare, and that we still have so much to give through our entire lives. And you can see it's a little bit operatic in its scale. What else, Andrea?
I love it when you go to theatres in London, and there's always those funny little alcoves, those beautiful old theatres, and there's in the foyer you'll find some funny little terrace and alcove, and I've worked as an actor in London, and the backstage in those West End theatres is really fascinating. So it was something I said to Bruce, let's kind of create a funny off sort of space, which is what we've got.
But I guess the other big metaphor I was trying to push was the idea of a stage, that they've lived their lives, their highlights on stage, and that this is one more performance for them. So the room is raised quite simply on a platform.
And tell us a little bit more about the notional setting. It's a retirement. Actually, we might throw to Kate, one of the cast, to tell us a little bit more about her character, Jean, as well, who was also one of those classic characters who is this play has a wonderful conceit of three people who are in a relatively established relationship. The other three guys have been at this home for a while, and then into that mix is thrown a wild card, a spanner into the works, as it were, to mix things up a little bit. But Kate, do you want to tell us a little bit about the room that these guys inhabit, and also tell us a little bit about Jean?
Yeah, well, Jean is a bit of a wild card, a spanner, but she's a diva, and if you throw a diva in amongst other divas, it's sort of a battle to the finish, really. She was, I suppose if you think of Maria Callas and Joan Sutherland, she was in that league. So she's lived a life of great privilege, and straitened times have brought her to a retirement home. We've called it the Thomas Beecham home. Beecham House. And it was based upon, I think Ronald Harwood saw that wonderful documentary, Tosca's Kiss, about a home in Milan, which Verdi, our man in the play, Giuseppe Verdi, he endowed it for old opera singers in Milan. And there was a documentary about it. It's heartbreaking and touching and wonderful. Anyway, Harwood wrote the play about it, but we called it Beecham House rather than Casa di Riposa. And Jean has... Sorry?
Much easier to say.
See. And Jean has had to come here because she's lost everything. And she comes to the three, or into the mix of three who are well-established, former colleagues. And, the story unrolls from there. And there's a lot of bridges to be mended, But the important thing is there's a future as well, and I think that's what's interesting about this play. Bruce has alluded to, passing through that sort of thing, but there's a great sense, I think, what I love about it, is that sense that it is art that renews the life in all of them. Their artistry, which they thought was dead and gone. It hasn't, it's still there. And that's the spirit of the play, and I love that as an artist myself. It gives me hope for the next couple of decades.
And there is a wonderful line in this play that kind of captures the sort of experience that I think it creates, which is art is nothing if it does. I'll probably get this slightly wrong, but it's Andrew's line, but he might correct me. But art is nothing if it doesn't make you feel. And I think that's close. I almost got it. But actually, speaking of bridge mending, as you were, Kate, one of the bridges that needs to be mended is with Andrew's character, Reggie. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Reggie and what Reggie contributes to the mix?
Reginald Paget is me. He's the tenor of the piece. Was married to Jean, and that storyline gets revealed as different skeletons get wrenched out of their closets during the sojourn at this house. Reggie is, I've sort of thought he was rather like a regimented David Niven, I guess. He's a stickler for facts and organisation. He likes to have instant meetings. He's always planning ahead. Everything has to be detailed. He likes to know exactly where he is at any given moment and what anybody else is going to do. And of course, that doesn't fit very well at all when his past comes unexpectedly to not just visit but to live. I was told that tenors are very insecure people because they have to reach such high particular notes that they feel that at any minute they're going to get found out or they're not going to be able to do it. So they compensate a lot by being very forceful and bossy. And Reginald certainly fits that pattern. He's a rather sad character as well. A lot of his life wasn't really as fulfilled as he would have liked. But I think he's found his spot here, and he certainly has worked with these. In their history, this is the Quartet that did sing a rather famous version of the Quartet from Rigoletto. So the play itself being called Quartet, of course, it has 4 characters, and it is about their coming to terms with and revisiting the actual quartet that they did in their youth. And there was a famous recording made under the direction of Sir George or Georg Schulte, yes? Is that what we're thinking? And we think that's where these people came from when they had their illustrious careers, not just in England, but also in international. They were international stars, but now they've come to the twilight years, and, you know, all has to be reshaken. They think they've actually reached some level of security, but in fact, it's anything but once the play starts, you know, revealing the different secrets that people have.
And Andrew, you talk about the characters' past history as opera singers. I understand there's been an opera consultant on the show. Does someone want to talk a little bit about the process of kind of getting to know more about, if we needed to know more, getting to know more about opera or what that involved? Chrissy, do you know?
I used to hate opera. And I used to hate it because it seems so phony, you know. And I, as an actor, watching them and sort of going, oh God, you know, I wish they could act. But
Apologies to the opera singer,
having worked with Zara, who trained us to do the last little bit of the show, which it's all in Italian, which was really difficult. I really appreciated for the very first time how extraordinary opera singers are, and how on earth can they get to those high notes or that dimension of sound is. I mean, I'm dying to go and see an opera now, really. So it's completely turned me around. So that's been a great privilege about working on this show. So, yeah.
And while you're mic'd up, do you want to tell us a little bit about Sissy?
Yeah, Sissy's a bit close to home for me because she's on the very beginning of losing it. Like...
The early days, the very early days.
Hang on, let me finish the story. Because my mother has Alzheimer's, and dear Sissy is in the beginning of it, and apparently the terrible statistics are that after 80, 1 in 3 of us will get it. So it's a bit sad, and you know, I mean, all those moments that we lose in our life, you know, there they are. However, yeah, so that's been a really interesting journey for me to sort of relate to where my mother is at a little bit. But she's a light character, and she would have played all the pants roles in the operas, you know. She's a mezzo. So she was the sort of character, you know, the character one, and would never have got to the soprano roles that the character of Jean plays. So she's always a bit of in awe of the Jean character. Yeah, so it's been great fun doing it.
And also saucy types she would play too.
Yeah, saucy roles, all that sort of stuff, you know.
There's quite a bit of sauciness that goes on in the course of the play, and which might be a very neat segue. I'm judged entirely by the quality of my segues on this event, but this is a pretty good one. Speaking of sauciness, there's a particularly saucy character, which is the character that Trevor plays. Wilf, do you want to tell us a little bit about Wilf, Trevor?
Wilfred Bonza, the baritone of the quartet, is a Rigoletto in the opera, so on the comedy role, and so I get a lot of gags, and because I suppose my character was married happily for 35 years, so supposedly faithfully, it comes out that perhaps that wasn't the fact. But he's now in his older years, he's completely obsessed by sex. So we get to talk about old people having sex a lot in this play. And as we all know, old people have sex a lot, don't they? And so I get to be really filthy. I mean, sometimes really filthy, but sort of excused in a way, I suppose, sometimes. Because it's a character role of Rigoletto, and he is there to dig into the rather straight folk that I'm hanging around with in the play, in the actual play. There are some parallels between the opera and our play. That's it, really. It's but he's a sidekick, really, and I'm very happy to play opposite these two romantic leads. There's a scene that they do together that makes me weep. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's Romeo and Juliet are your nicknames. And watching two old people fall in love again is absolutely delightful. So it's not all jokes and dirty talk from me. There's some lovely poetry in the piece as well.
And I think, as Trevor was saying, one of the things that this piece does do in its writing is flip between something that might appear quite light-hearted into something that then affects you or makes you feel. Maybe we might throw to Tony up the end next. What are the challenges for composing or sound designing for a piece that's about music?
As someone who does not use opera as their weekend go-to, it's a pretty eye-opening experience to come in and go, okay, these characters this has been their life for the entire period. So delving in and trying to find what's out there in opera land, as any of the opera lovers out there will know, is an amazingly vast repertoire, and the recreation of each of the works. Every composer has different ways of doing it, but then every musician and every singer has their own take on each of those works as well. So they talk a lot throughout the play about so-and-so's version of this or so-and-so's version of that, and who did this and who did that and all that sort of stuff. The first time I read it, I was just sitting there going, oh, I have no idea what any of this is. But immersing myself into that world, particularly the world of Verdi that we spend a lot of time with, who wrote the quartet, you kind of get lost in the complexities and the amazing kind of way that they've woven these stories together, four people singing at the same time, being able to put forwards these kind of amazing through lines, and then having an audience sit there and understand and watch and feel that. They talk about it a little bit in the play, but it's an amazing thing to kind of experience for the first time, which I was lucky enough to do, and then continue to experience as we dig through the insane repertoire that's out there for the show. So even though I'm not writing any of the stuff, digging through this huge repertoire has been amazing.
And any particular favourites that might turn up, or is there spoilers? We can't.
Oh well, the quartet's going to. I've listened to a lot of version of the quartet from Rigoletto at this point in time, but there's a lot of other stuff that we've kind of been going through. Verdi's repertoire is actually amazingly broad as far as that stuff goes. So.
Great, thanks, Tony. And we might throw to David to talk about the lighting of the piece. This is after Ladies in Black, which was a little one to light, a small show that didn't really involve too much. What is now that you've slept over the break? What does Quartet have in store lighting wise?
Well, incomparable. No, it's a totally different kettle of fish to Ladies in Black, completely different kettle of fish. And that's fortunate, because I wouldn't like to have to do too many Ladies in Black too often. It's a fairly demanding task. Look, lighting for this one, I think I might segue a little bit to start with. And firstly, I'd just like to say how wonderful it is to see how many people come to these events. I think it's extraordinary that we get this many. Having been in Melbourne and just watched in a city 4 times our size, fewer people come to these events. I think you can give yourselves a big pat on the back. Indeed. Look, lighting-wise on this one, I have followed Bruce's and Andrew's lead and pushed the lighting at certain times in an operatic way. We do go to places where the play doesn't actually dictate we go, and we use the venue of it being opera singers and opera and music being part of the story. So we push the play lighting-wise. But to be honest, if I do my job properly in this one, I step aside, I'm out of the way, and I let these 4 extraordinary actors do their work, and if my lighting's good, you won't notice it, and you'll see every nuance of their extraordinary acting. So I think that's probably the best way of summing up what I do in this one.
Thank you, David. And yeah, can I just reiterate David's comments? It is incredibly heartening as someone relatively new to the company in the city to see the level of engagement of QTC audiences. It's quite a delight to be on the end of. I might segue now into Katarina Hebert, who's the assistant director. And one of the things that we're really keen to be doing at QTC is creating pathways for artists and paying a lot of attention to how we nurture the next generation of practitioners and thinking very carefully and strategically about how we do that. Having an assistant director on a show is a case in point of that sort of thing. So Katarina, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you've done as an assistant director, what the role's involved, what the process has been like?
Sure. Andrea and I have a bit of a history. We've worked together a few times now, and we have a great relationship, I think, as artists. We trust each other really implicitly, and I think that's really, really important. An assistant director in a room is there to support, but also to provoke. So your job is to kind of question and prod and poke. When the director is looking at everything, you kind of go, okay, this moment over here isn't working, why isn't that working? Or did you mean that? Or is this why this is happening? And so my job is to pose those kinds of questions to keep, I guess, to answer them for myself as well, but to also keep clarifying what we're doing, I guess, and what the message is that we want to say in this kind of show. But I'm going to reiterate everything that's been said already. It's an incredible room to be in. I feel incredibly privileged to be in the room with these amazing artists. And, you know, I've learnt so much. And I've worked on a few QTC shows. So it's been really great to kind of get into a room with artists who have been doing this for a while and you know their stuff. It's great.
It's been invaluable for me to have Kat because the term assistant director, I prefer the term provocateur because often I'll be looking at the actors and not looking at the script, and Kat will say, there's a silence here, there's a pause here, what do you think that's there for? You know, because the writer will have written rhythms into the script, but I'll be so, you know, busily involved in the magic that's happening in front of me. So having that constant, you know, dramaturgical support is imperative. And also, as a director, you kind of doubt all the time, and you doubt stuff, and you go, oh, is that choice working? To have someone who can kind of be the person who agrees or provokes is really fantastic. And as Kat said, the last show that Katarina directed, which was in the Cremorne, which was The Pitch. Yeah. So it was great for Kat to work on a show that was in the bigger space too. But, yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, while the microphone is travelling in this direction, I might just ask Bruce to talk a little bit about costumes as well, because we haven't necessarily talked about costumes yet. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the costume design for the show?
Costumes. Well, they're all pretty naturalistic apart from the end costumes. So I guess Andrea and I just talked about characters and then we revisited once the actors joined us in the rehearsal room, and I always like to see what they want to bring to a show because I figure it's my job to not only make them physically comfortable but conceptually comfortable with what they're wearing. So there's sometimes a bit of conversation, a few changes here and there once they join us in the room. So been a little bit of that. Yeah, but it's been fairly straightforward, I think. Andrea?
Rigoletto's got a hump. Got a humpback. As you know, perhaps know, classically in the opera. So there's been a lot of talk about the size of my hump.
Yeah.
Boom, boom.
Vitally, yes, yeah. Vitally important talk. And an English play set in a particularly English setting and context and milieu. Does anyone want to talk to the kind of accent challenges that have gone on, or the accent work that's gone on? I take it we're not doing it in local accents. Christine, do you want to?
Oh well, we have a lovely voice coach, and she's been honing our English skills, like speaking more English than normally. We're not over the top on it, but we're trying to keep it clipped, and you know, it's quite specific actually, the English accent. So you've got to be really onto it all the time. And that's been great because she's been there and she's been really helping us. But one of the things I'd like to say about the play is that, you know, as you get older, life gets a bit sort of, oh my gosh, you know. And this play is about people that are in that part of their life, but they're still like children, and I think we all are, you know. Like, it's just scratched the surface of that old stuff. And it's all these children underneath that we all still are, you know. And I really love that about it.
It's true. There is a wonderful speech in the play about how you feel on the inside. To the effect, this is my bad paraphrasing of it, but to the effect of, you know, how you feel on the inside doesn't change regardless of how you look on the outside. That's somewhat shorter than the slightly more poetic version that Wilf delivers.
Can I give an anecdote about ageing? You know, I hit a point in my life as a woman where my brain stopped working. Some women in the audience will know what I'm talking about. And I forget names and I forget things. And so we've got 4 characters in the play who are always forgetting things, and our 4 actors often forget things too. So we have this hilarious moments where we're trying to work on a play where everyone forgets everything with 4 actors and a director who are forgetting everything, and we just end up in just hysterics. And, you know, talk about art reflecting life. But anyway, but don't worry, they do say the right thing at the right time. They do.
Eventually. Well, we might throw out to the house if there's any questions for anyone on the team. Yes, sir.
Thank you. How do you teach an actor to sing? Is there any singing by the actor?
No. Our opera consultant has been assisting with the world of the singer. Let me just put it that way. And we had the wonderful Lisa Gastine come in as well. And I grew up with Lisa, so it was great to have her in the room to give us fabulous anecdotes about divas and stuff. That was amazing. But no, there's no actual... It's the world of the performer. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to ruin it. It's very different to the film. What happens in the play is totally different to the film. So, yeah.
So if you've seen the film, still come and see the play.
Could I just add to that, though, to your question? There is an attitude, however, that was very useful to learn. A way of standing, a way of, you know, presenting the self, which I think we all noticed in both Lisa and in Zara Barrett, both of whom are dramatic sopranos and have, you know, worked at the highest levels. There's just something about their presence that struck me, and I think for my character of Jean, she would have had that, and she would have expected to say, I want this, and it will happen. So that was what we learned. Sadly, we couldn't possibly learn how to sing in 4 weeks. I mean, it's extraordinary. But just learning about the world, as Andrea says, has been invaluable.
I'll come back to that question that was there in a moment, but can I just add one question? Was there did any diva-ish behaviour find its way into the... seemed like a very relaxed and lovely bunch of people. No overlap there. We might go here.
Or Devo behaviour.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Well, we've only at the beginning, we'll see.
Plenty of time for that. Yeah, I think, sir, we have one over there.
You talked of the English accent, but there is, of course, many English.
Yes, it's received pronunciation, RP, we're working on.
And also, a lot of singers whose singing voice is very different from their speaking voice. Yes. Is there much of that about your...
Well, when they get it right, yes, there is. That's all I'm going to say.
Can you repeat the questions, please?
Certainly, yeah. The question was about, obviously there are many English accents, and the second half of the question was about singing and people singing different voices and accents as well. And then we responded that...
Is there a difference between that often when someone's singing, their speaking voice is very, very different, and is that going to happen in the play? And I just said, yes, it is.
Yeah. That's even more economical. That's great. I think we had one down the front, then we'll come up to you. So yes.
The stage has been extended out a long way out here and then built up at the back. There's an awful lot of stage behind it, so obviously that's a very conscious decision to record, so we should know why. And I recall comments about lighting people when they're at the front, it was really difficult.
The question, just I'll repeat the question. The question about the stage is built a fair way forward, and there's obviously a fair bit of space out the back, and talking about the consciousness of that decision. And whether that relates to the challenges of lighting people downstage. I don't know, David, do you want to take that one? You already got the mic, great.
there's a number of things. I'll try and be brief. One of the things that Andrea is very keen on, and we are keen on in this theatre, is to bring people forward. It works acoustically better, and it works much better for the relationship with the audience. From a lighting point of view, it's a bugger. Because when you come forward to the proscenium arch, we lose a lot of our technical space, our really useful technical space. However, in this particular instance, in this play, what we're being asked to do forward to the proscenium arch, the very, very sophisticated lighting of this auditorium more than adequately caters for it. And the benefits we get from moving the whole things down forward. With 4 people in an 850-seat theatre, you need an intimacy, and so the closer we can get the actors to the audience, the better it is. And this is a very sweet spot down here for the audience-actor relationship.
And it's a touring show.
And it is a touring show, yes.
Which is a very good point. It's incumbent upon me to plug the regional tour. This show, as you will be aware, a vitally important part of what the Queensland Theatre Company does, as opposed to other kind of comparable companies in other cities, is to play to our whole state. It's embodied in our name. We're not the Brisbane Theatre Company in the same way that the Melbourne Theatre Company or the Sydney Theatre Company are those companies. And so this show will be going on a statewide tour to so many venues I can't possibly list them all. But Andrea might know them all off the top of her head, or she might not.
Christine's holding up her hand. There's 9 of them. Can I remember them all? Okay, so we go to Toowoomba, and then we go to Kawana, and then we go to Rockhampton and Townsville and Mackay and Gladstone and Cairns and the Gold Coast and Ipswich. And have I missed any? No! Not in that order.
It's like kind of Queensland regional bingo. It's great. We might, I think we have one up here. Thank you.
This is clearly a conservatory, and there's sort of floral or plant bank designs on the back. Are there going to be real plants there? Because of the importance of bouquets in opera and the metaphor of dying and going home and fading. I wonder if we're going to be using plants, real plants.
That's a fabulous, fabulous question. I'm going to attempt to get most of it. There was an observation that the set is clearly a conservatory, and a question about whether or not there will be real plants, particularly given the prevalence of bouquets in opera, and also the relationship to the play's reflection on mortality and dying plants. You did so much better than I was. Yeah, I got most of it. I wasn't quite as eloquent at the end there. Bruce or Andrew or anyone. Do you want to?
No, we actually took conservatory more from the music conservatory point of view. And the scroll-like swirls are tapping into that Art Nouveau architectural kind of presentation. And I guess they touch vaguely on the treble clef and the bass clef designs as well.
And I think the idea of the conservatory too came from the fact that this may have been in this beautiful manor house in Kent in England. There may have been a part of the house that was a bit neglected, and that our fabulous 4 ended up owning as their own. So that's where that idea came from, and it also just offered us the opportunity to do something really specky, than just having a music room.
And if any of you see this show in the regions on Wednesday afternoons, they'll be performing Ibsen's Ghosts. No, it's a joke. Need one more person. Any more questions? Yes, madam.
It's not really a question, but I was wondering, Verdi was a very patriotic person in a time of immense political upheaval and the formation of Italy. And a lot of his works embody some of that. And I just wondered if, you got your singers have picked up any of that as they, work with Rigoletto and that kind of, it's a bit sort of natural.
The question was about Verdi's involvement in the politics of his time, and whether the cast have been inspired by that, picked up any of that. I reckon Trevor wants to answer that.
we've all listened to the opera in lots of different variations of it, but it's not specifically about Verdi. We're just using this one quartet, which is a big moment for us because we apparently recorded it in years ago, and so we're trying to reproduce that time past now in our old age, and it's not a very political play, I have to say. It's got moments of class difference and there's lots of issues. It's a social play. It is.
Great question.
Yeah, but the original film, which Kate mentioned, it's called Tosca's Kiss. It was made in 1984 as a documentary about the Verdi bequest, where all the old opera singers from Italy. It's the most fabulous film if you can get hold of it, and that's really the starting point for Ronald Harwood's writing. And it was a really momentous piece of filmmaking. As I thought, just sticking a camera in these really, really aged opera singers and still belting it out, aged 80, some of them. That's really amazing. Yeah.
Great. I think we had one more here, and then we'll go up the back.
I have two questions. The first question is, I just noticed the pink along the front of the stage. Did you do something with sound in that and lighting? Or?
Here?
Yes.
There's lots of little lights hidden in there. Yep.
And the second question was, have you found, because the performance here hasn't started, and you feel that it's all gelled together now?
This is a question about, I can probably answer that in principle, that I don't think anything ever gels until we've got an audience, actually. I think, and so that vital process, I'll let Andrew answer that, but too, that vital process of previews. And for me, this event is part of that process too, because it's the first time the work is reaching a general public audience in some fashion. But then previews become a much more important part of that. The question for anyone who didn't hear it was about does the team feel that the work as the sort of deadline of opening is looming has gelled? Yet I might let Andrea. Kate.
I'll start first. It takes, so much happens. Like we've only just started looking at the lights and how they're all looking. The actors haven't been on stage yet. That happens tonight. We have our first technical rehearsal in about half an hour's time. So what happens? So we have to do all that. You get to a point in the rehearsal room, and then everything just falls apart a bit when you come on stage and put all the bits together. And then tomorrow afternoon we'll be teching. Tomorrow night we have our first dress rehearsal. So what happens between tomorrow night and Saturday night with our first preview is massive. Like it's almost usually a different show. And then we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night previews, because this play really is going to be a whole different thing when the other character in the play, which is the audience, is involved. So you never feel that it's gelled. In fact, if I did, I'd be worried. Because you always have to be on the edge of your seat going, what's not working, what's not working, what's not right, so that you can hopefully get it to the best it possibly can. And of course, sometimes you think a moment's really working, and then in front of an audience, it doesn't. You go, oh, okay. Or something that you didn't trust in rehearsal, suddenly the audience love it, and you go, oh, okay. So, yeah, there's a big, big journey to have between now and next Thursday night when we open. And it's totally nerve-wracking.
Well, on that note, everything that Andrea has said from a director's perspective, from an actor's perspective, can I just say this is the first time I've seen the real set, and it's very exciting because we've been working in a rehearsal room with tape on the floor and stand-in props and in our rehearsal gear. And now comes the time when we transition into the real physical world of the play that's been built, and bring all that work from the rehearsal room, put on the costumes, do the hair, it's starting, the makeup, and then you look across the room and you see your fellow artists looking different again. So there's a whole lot of accommodating of new energies, and you're almost on another level to the one that you were in the rehearsal room. So all that work has got to become embedded now in the new space, in the new energies, and that's really thrilling and exciting, but yes, nerve-wracking. And, I will just add to what everyone else has said. Without the audience, we're not acting. So we need you just to, complete the dynamic, really, between what's up here and what's out there.
Any other yes, yes.
It is, because normally it would have been on Monday night. We knew you'd all be on holidays if we did it Monday.
I think the gentleman in the white shirt.
You've sort of partly answered it, but given the history of the development of where the plays come from, what decade have you actually set it in for this performance? Because I think that might have some sort of an influence. But of more interest to me, where did you source those beautiful doors?
They were made. All right. The play was written in 99. We're setting it in 96 purely because there's reference to George Schulte, who was the musical director of the Covent Garden for many, many years, and he died in 97. So that's where my head's going, 96. Now, these amazing doors were built by Jamie. Jamie, who's one of our extraordinary carpenters at QTC. And I loved going and watching him doing it because to get all those curves, I don't know if anyone else finds it, but I found it fascinating. He'd have a piece of wood this big, this long, say, and he'd cut little rivets in it so that it could bend, and then he'd cut a few more to see how far it could bend. It was just a fascinating thing to see how he got all the curves in it. I've just been saying, what can I build to put those doors in? I need to build a shed out the back of my house, but I think they're a bit too big. But they're stunning. They're just, they're gorgeous. Did I answer the whole question?
There's about to be a very large granny flat at the Moore residence, I think, after...
Will they travel? Yes. Everything's designed to go on tour, even in very small venues. Theatre magic.
I think we had one up the back. Yes.
Two questions, and I'm not sure if you can answer them, but I wonder how many people come to a preview as well as a show, and the other one, which has left me for this minute.
The question was about how many people do... good. The question was how many people come to a preview as well as the show. I've been to a show of hands. Does anyone do that? Yeah. I mean, and that for me is... and then come to show again? And by preview, do you mean tonight, or do you mean another preview show? Tonight. Buy two tickets, yeah. I mean, I would, if you are talking about the preview performances, I'd encourage people to. Of course I would, because I'm a sort of theatre nerd, and hanging out in previews is what I love doing. But actually, to get to be as vital a part of the show's evolution as you are when you see a preview, and then to get to see how a work evolves over the course of a season, and whether that's actually previews or whether that's just different start and end of a season, I think is actually quite wonderful to watch work. Because as the team were mentioning, that there's a certain rhythm in the run-up to an opening, but actually there's a rhythm that continues after that, which is a work continues to evolve, and sometimes a run is as long as or longer than rehearsal, depending on the nature of the show. And so works, the beautiful thing about working in live performance is that it does evolve, and it does shift, and not fundamentally, but sometimes significantly. So where, if you are indeed a theatre nerd, like myself, then I would encourage you to come more than once, and I'm deeply heartened by the fact that people do come more than once. So thank you for that. That makes me very, very happy indeed. Makes all of us very happy. While we're in that glow, basking in the glow of that happiness, we've got time for one more. Do we have we'll jump to door prize. One more, then we'll door prize. Yes, sir.
That's what the rehearsal frame is, or what the whole organisational time frame is?
Yes, I can answer that. Yeah, so generally rehearsal period is 4 weeks. So there's 4 weeks prior to this week, and then there's a period that begins sort of at the start of this week, which is the 5th week, and then 3 or 4 days technical rehearsal, and then 4 previews. Varies from show to show, but that's the general time frame. Bruce has a qualification.
But Andrew and I started talking in about September. So I've been meeting deadlines right through September, October, November, December to get... I think they started building the set in early December. And so I had a deadline in October and September, I think, yeah.
And to add to that, I asked the actors to come into rehearsal with their lines down, or familiar with them. So the actors were working months ahead of rehearsals beginning. And for the director, most of your work is really done many months beforehand in the research phase with the designer, trying to decide what you want to say with the play. So, yeah, that starts a long way away from rehearsals.
A long time ago, I heard that Anthony Hopkins, the actor, didn't actually sit down and bash his lines. He read the script 100 times, after which he knew his lines and everyone else's. So he was free to play in front of the camera, was how he put it. When Andrea said, "I'd like you to come with your lines down," I thought, oh, this is the first time in my life will I be able to do it.
Nobody asked me.
Anyway, I thought I'd adopt Anthony Hopkins' thing, so I just read the play every day, and surprisingly, it worked really well. I had to line bash, in places, because there's some things that just elude you, but it was a completely new way of coming at character, because you get to know the end and the beginning, and you understand the beginning and the end, and you'll be across the arc or the journey of the character, and suddenly things that are said earlier, you're aware of, instead of just learning it. Do you know what I'm saying? It was different for me, and I loved it, actually. So August, for me, I started.
And then the company gloss on that, of course, would be that in terms of me thinking about what we're going to do in 2017, that process is underway now. So there's a sense of what plays will exist in the 2017 season, which is my first season already. We might have time for what the door prize is on its way. I think you remembered the second half of your question.
Yes, I remembered it before you got to it, but it fits with what you're saying. Who chooses the actors? Is it a panel decision, or is it Andrea's decision, and how far ahead are they chosen?
And they all put in a big hat. Andrew, do you want to talk to the casting of this show? Yeah.
I pretty much knew who I wanted, and how it always works with well, I was actually artistic associate at the time, but or visiting director, or you always discuss that with the artistic director, and of course it was Wesley's season, so that was in discussion with Wesley. But I, being an actor myself, I hate auditioning, and I don't like auditioning actors. And I had 4 people who I knew would be perfect for the role, so it was so exciting to just be able to say, "I'd like you to do it," and you do, so that was great. And I was very lucky that they all agreed, even though I asked them to learn the lines. So yeah, it's if it was a younger cast, I probably would do auditions, but obviously with a cast with such esteemed artists whose work I knew very well, I was just lucky to get who I wanted. Very lucky. So yeah.
And how far ahead?
Oh, well, I don't know. August, I suppose. Yeah, August, September. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we might wrap it up. Before we do wrap, I see Yuvi nearing me with the door prize, which appropriately is a double pass to the screening of the Met's version of Lulu, the opera based on the Vertican. I think it's by acclaimed director William Kentridge, the South African director. So, should we draw it?
There's actually 2 double passes.
There's 2 double passes. 2 people. There will be 2 winners. Does anyone want to do the honours? Trevor Stewart. Bring us home. And winner number 1 is
a green ticket, C42. Hand high in the air now. C42, green ticket. Oh, yay!
Congratulations. And winner number 2?
Winner number 2, someone else want to try?
Chris, do you want to
This is a blue ticket, 72.
The blue tickets are like black tickets, by the way. So
Oh,
yes.
well, this says blue.
It's obviously not these
It's
guys.
got a black sort of edge on it. B72.
Well, we might have to redraw.
Oh, redraw.
Oh, no, we got it. Yay, congratulations, sir. Thank you again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you at this version of Quartet and multiple performances, and indeed more performances and briefings, production and play briefings throughout the year. Please join me in thanking the cast and team of Quartet.